Chief Marshal B.S. Dhanoa and Wing Commander Abhinandan Varthaman, who piloted a MiG-21 Bison during the airstrike at a terror camp in Pakistan's Balakot in February, today flew together in a two-seater version of the Russian-origin Legacy jet. Air Chief Marshal Dhanoa commanded a squadron of frontline ground attack fighters and hit dug-in defenses in the icy heights of the Kargil during the war in 1999. Now, today's sortie, the two took off in the MiG-21 trainer from Pathankot and flew for 30 minutes. After a pre-flight check, the Air Chief Marshal then climbed into the front seat, while Wing Commander Abhinandan took the rear seat of the trainer jet, whose controls in the front are replicated in the back. Minutes later, the jet took off into the clear blue sky above Pathankot and did some maneuvers. Let's just listen in.
It was also a pleasure for with Abhinandan, because he's got his flying category back. That is what all pilots look forward to. I also ejected in 88. It took me 9 months to get my category back. He's been back in less than 6 months, so that's very good for him. And he's a trainer captain, and he's got all his qualifications back. That is a very good thing, that he's back to being an instructor on the MiG-21, and that is a great thing. Both of us have two things in common. One is both of us ejected. Second, both of us have fought the Pakistanis. I fought in Kargil and he fought after Balakot.
Well, earlier NDTV's Vishnu Som talked us through the preparations ahead of that sortie when we first saw the Wing Commander Abhinandan, and also something that was remarked on is how he's changed his look. That famous handlebar moustache is gone.
Air Chief in the front seat and Abhinandan in the rear seat. And so I'm just trying to see if that is Abhinandan in the rear seat. Yeah, it is Abhinandan in the rear seat of that MiG-21. So the Air Chief is actually flying Abhinandan, not the other way around. It should be mentioned, of course, that this is a twin-seat aircraft, but the Air Chief, B.S. Dhanoa, a veteran as far as MiG-21s are concerned. He's been flying that aircraft for decades. And Abhinandan now in the rear seat of that MiG-21 being flown by the Air Chief. So both pilots, both extremely very experienced on the MiG-21 aircraft. This is called the MiG-21U. It's the trainer variant of the MiG-21. Gargi, it seems Abhinandan has trimmed his moustache a little bit. It's a slightly different look over there for Abhinandan, who had those sort of handlebar moustache, but he is now in the back seat of that aircraft. The Air Chief, very much the boss, in control of that aircraft. It was a 30-minute sortie. These images coming in from Pathankot Air Base. This took place earlier this morning, just a little while back, in fact. I should tell you that there was intense media scrutiny ahead of this. There was a lot of interest, but then they felt that there'd be so many journalists descending on Pathankot that this flight, which was supposed to take place tomorrow, is actually taking place today, number one. And number two, there is only one agency, ANI, which is broadcasting or which has been allowed access to this particular site. Now, the Air Chief has also spoken to Abhinandan, to ANI, I beg your pardon, and we'll get that soundbite later on. But there's this rollout of footage which is now taking place. What you saw earlier on, what you called an inspection, is actually called a walkabout, when the two pilots actually check out the control surfaces of the aircraft prior to a flight. Now, Air Chief Marshal Dhanoa has been flying on the MiG-21 quite a few times over the last several months. On the 20th anniversary of the Kargil War, he'd flown what's called a missing man formation in honor of the Indian Air Force pilot, Squadron Leader Ahuja, from his own squadron during the Kargil War, who lost his life after he was struck by a Pakistani surface-to-air missile over Kargil. So, as I mentioned, this is the MiG-21U version of the aircraft. It's a trainer version of the jet, and being commanded by the Air Force Chief. We were inquiring earlier on with our friends and sources in the IAF about how this was going to be, and we were sort of led to believe that it would be Abhinandan in command of the aircraft. But you can rest assured, when Air Chief Marshal B.S. Dhanoa gets an opportunity to fly that to a MiG-21, his favorite aircraft, he isn't going to let that opportunity go for Abhinandan or for anyone else.